Good afternoon. This is the Chorus Call conference operator. Welcome, and thank you for joining the Snam 9 months 2022 consolidated results conference call. As a reminder, all participants are in listen-only mode. After the presentation, there'll be an opportunity to ask questions. Should anyone need assistance during the conference call, they may signal an operator by pressing star and 0 on their telephone. At this time, I would like to turn the conference over to Mr. Stefano Venier, CEO of Snam. Please go ahead, sir.
Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon and welcome to Snam 9-month results presentation. Page 1. Gas prices volatility continued with peaks during August, September, followed by sharp decline from October on the back of mild weather, the end of EU storage infilling capacity campaign and recession fears. Italian demand was down 3% in 9 months, driven by decline of residential demand, but -5% due to mild weather, and a drop by 9% in industrial demand due to high prices, while thermoelectric sector was up 3% as effect of low hydro production. Exports to Northern Europe continued reaching 2.7 BCM, confirming Italy's role as a transport hub. Q3 demand was down by 7% year-on-year, mainly as an effect of industrial demand decline acceleration. This trend was even stronger in October, with overall demand down by 20%, also due to mild weather. We have to consider that not all of this shortfall in demand was, let's say, in connection to reduction of production, because many of these industrial users switched to other kind of fuels to substitute the gas due to the cost of this fuel. In 9 months, we experienced an unprecedented swing in gas flows. Volumes from north, means Tarvisio and Passogrias, were down 18% year-on-year, while import from southern routes, like through TAP, Gela and Mazara, were up by 18%, and LNG volumes increased by 27% again on year-on-year. Moving to macro conditions. RAB deflator reached nearly 4% in H1 2022, while the tightening of the monetary policy with EU Central Bank 75 bips hike was coupled with the widening on credit spread. Our regulatory framework provides a good cash flow edge against this backdrop over time, even if some short-term mismatch between revenues and financial charges rollover are possible. With regard to the 2023, all the variables are available. We expect an announcement from ARERA by the end of November to provide clarity in that sense. Over this time period, Snam has performed well and has contributed to the national supply security by, firstly, acquiring the 2 floating storage and regasification units that have been both recently authorized, and second, by taking the role of storage operator of last resort, supporting the infilling campaign. Storage facilities are 95% full, a level well above the ambitious national target of 90% before the winter. The expansion of new businesses continued as well. We added in Q3 9 biogas plants for a total capacity of 9 MW to our portfolio, and the Gigafactory project, the one that we are developing in joint venture with De Nora, was selected in July by the EU Commission within the IPCEI H2 Tech wave. At the same time, we have delivered sound results. Adjusted net profit is broadly in line with the same period of last year, despite the WACC revision impacting 2022, mainly thanks to the resilience of our core business, the contribution of transition businesses, and the strong performance of our associates. Net debt reduction was year-end 2021 was driven by a temporary working capital swing that we already explained during H1 results, and that we expect to revert by year-end. As for financing, 2022 funding needs were covered in the first half of the year at a very favorable condition versus current levels. Moreover, a 2 billion credit facility was secured in the H2 2022 as a 2023 pre-funding, providing adequate flexibility to manage current market volatility. Switching to the following page that regards security of supply. Current energy crisis has reshaped priorities with an increased focus on security and diversification of supply. Snam, since the beginning of the emergency, has put its experience in building and managing large energy infrastructure to deliver the shortest possible time to new regasification units with 5 BCM capacity each. The important conditions for the success of this complex project has been the definition of a supporting framework providing for the full recognition of acquisition costs in RAB, along with a regulated return and an 85-90% minimum guaranteed. Second, the appointment of 2 extraordinary commissioners and the design of a fast-tracked authorization process that are both completed. The first vessel, named Golar Tundra, will be located in Piombino onshore for the first 3 years and then relocated on an offshore site that has still to be selected. We have started in parallel all the permits, engineering, and tendering process, and we received on the 25th of October the full authorization to proceed. On November the 9th, we will start the construction phase of the 8.5 kilometer of pipeline, with the target to have the asset in place by next April and start operations in May 2023 to support the next storage infilling season. We will soon also start the process for allocating and tendering the capacity for the forthcoming years. The second vessel, named BW Singapore, instead will be placed offshore of Ravenna. We have received few days ago, last Monday, the authorization, and we have just completed the acquisition of an offshore terminal under a long-term concession, of which we are planning the revamping. Then we will start the construction of a sea line, 8.5 kilometers, and an onshore pipeline by 34 kilometers to connect the terminal to the transport network, aiming to have the infrastructure ready as planned by the end of Q3 2024. Next slide on gas storage and filling. Stogit, the subsidiary that controls all the storage capacity of the company, have its own storages fulfilled, as I said, by 95%, meaning 11.2 BCM of working gas plus 4.5 BCM of strategic storage. Snam significantly contributed to this achievement, as I mentioned in the beginning, and in detail in April, given that the infilling curve was low, we stored the operating volume needed for the year, almost 0.8 BCM. Since June, Snam started also to act as an operator of last resort to overcome a slow infilling process from the shippers and traders, driven by market conditions, mainly the high prices. And then we contributed to the infilling by 1.3 BCM. It's worth noting that we have been financed fully for the purchase, and we do not carry any volume or commodity risk for the gas we have stored in the storages. In 9 months, we have had a positive contribution on the other side from the output-based incentive, deriving from flexibility services provided on short-term storage auctions. On top of this, in the next 8 weeks, we will offer for the first time also an additional reverse flow service. Next slide. Biomethane is the cheapest and most competitive scalable green gas available. It can decarbonize consumption without changing infrastructure and end-user appliances. Consistently with an increased ambition, EU ambition, We can now rely on a national incentive framework as the long-awaited biomethane decree, filed to EC nearly a year ago, was finally approved and published on the Italian official journal on 26th of October. The incentive scheme leveraged on 1.7 billion resilience funds, with grants covering up to 40% of the investment for the realization of new plants and the conversion of existing biogas plants. Tariffs will be based on a competitive process and provide support for both waste and agri plants. Snam has built a sound proposition on this business with more than 30 megawatt of biomethane and biogas plants in operation or under construction as of today, and a strong expertise in both urban and agricultural feedstock production, so creating a strong platform that is among the most largest in the country. The decree will finally provide the needed visibility to go ahead with standing final investment decisions and ramp up of the investments. Now moving to the 9 months results on the following page, let's go through the bridge on EBITDA. Those numbers have been approved by the board. As you know, EBITDA for a period was 1,706 million, broadly in line with 9 months of 2021, despite the effects of the weighted average cost of capital review that is applied from January 1st, 2022, which implied an overall cap of 95 million in the period in the regulated revenues. The other key changes that allow to offset almost entirely this reduction in revenues are 55 million increase in regulated revenues, mainly attributable to the tariff RAB growth by 34 million, a positive volume effect gained by 23 million, which we expect to be partly reabsorbed by year-end. Higher output-based incentive, 14 million, due to the default and storage flexibility services. In the comparison with 2021, it's worth noting that 9 months of 2021 revenues benefited from a release of past items related to storage by 17 million, as already explained also in commenting the first half results. 17 million increase in fixed costs, mainly related to higher utilities volumes and cost, and vehicle fuel costs. Moreover, an 18 million euros increase in the EBITDA of energy transition businesses. The growth is mainly due to the strong performance of energy efficiency, mainly thanks to the deployment of the residential business pipeline and to the contribution of biomethane, that I just mentioned, that benefited from the entry into operation of new plants, and also the contribution that came from the M&A activity that progressed in this month significantly. A 33 million one-off contribution also came from the sale of past year's gas excess inventories, as we already mentioned in commenting the first half results, and a 3 million rental fee related to the lease of the Golar Tundra that, as you might remember, was both at the end of May and then rented for a few months before getting into the yard for the refurbishment to be prepared for the Piombino installment. In the year-on-year comparison, it must be taken also into consideration that the first half 2021 benefited again from a one-off provision release. Moving to the adjusted net profit analysis in the following page. Adjusted net profit for the period was 932 million, substantially in line with last year. D&A increased by 40 million due to the new assets that were put on stream. The increase of net financial expenses is mainly the result of higher interest rates due to the higher gross cost of debt, that moved from the 0.8% in the 9 months 2021 to about 1.1% in the 9 months of 2022, substantially in connection with the rise of the interest rates in general. This trend will continue also in Q4, of course. Associates contribution was higher by 38 million with respect to 9 months 2021, as, by the way, was almost achieved in the first half of the year, mainly due to the strong performance of Interconnector, the subsidiary that connects Belgium with the UK, that has reached the regulatory profit cap, thanks to the high export flows supported by the gas prices spreads and the great LNG capacity available in UK that supported the European demand. We also had the positive Teréga contribution by 6 million, thanks to the higher revenues following an increase in bookings of flows toward Spain and lower financial charges as a fact of bonds rollover. And finally, the good and satisfying performance of the Italian subsidiaries. On the basis of a strong 9-month results, we are fully confident on delivering at least 1,130 million of the full year net profit that we disclose as a guideline in commenting the first half results. In valuing the 9-month results, we should consider that about 90 million were non-repeatable, such as gas inventories disposals or non-recurring items, or subject to phasing, such as the interconnector contribution or gas volume effect, that both reached in the first part of the year the maximum achievable target in terms of return. But now let's make a more deep focus on the performance of the single associates that, as I said, did extremely well also in the first 9 months. Our portfolio performed, as I mentioned, in a very outperforming way, confirming in 9 months the lower performance that we already booked on the first half, for the reasons already mentioned that refers to the interconnector performance, but also the TAP short-term volume exceeding contracted capacity. Both will not determine any additional contribution because of the cap that is in place. The expansion of the latter has been also endorsed by the European Commission, and the market test is likely to happen in 2 steps, with the first one providing outcome in the first quarter of 2023 for a limited expansion, and the second one in July 2023 for the so-called full expansion of capacity. For the interconnector, looking forward, this maximum contribution that has been achieved in 2022 is set to be achieved also in 2023, given that more than 50% of the capacity has been already booked. Teréga showed an increase in revenues thanks to higher bookings towards Spain, as I said, as well as the lower financial charges. Storage capacity was fully fulfilled as in Italy. DESFA continued to benefit from strong LNG imports going to Bulgaria through the new interconnection. The 10-year development plan approved by the regulator this August entails about 800 million euros of investments, up by 50% versus the previous plan. As far as TAG is concerned, the capacity sold under long-term contracts is fully offsetting the Q3 shortfall in volumes delivered. For the first time last October, the infrastructure was operated on a physical reverse flow, and 6.5 BCM of reverse flow capacity was sold for the next thermal year, 2022-2023, and by 2 BCM for 2023 down to 2025. This flexibility is confirming the strategic role that the asset can play, not only in the short term, but also in the long run, with respect to the flows that can serve the Central European market for gas today and hydrogen in the future. 2023 potential volume reduction and mid-term market perspectives requires a thorough reassessment of the regulatory framework with respect to both the volume exposure and the entry-exit tariff scheme due to the radical change in the operation of these assets. And with that respect, consistently, a specific proposal will be submitted to the regulator in the upcoming months. And finally, EMG and ADNOC performed in line with the expectation. The value of the stake of ADNOC gas pipeline will be reassessed by accounting purposes by year-end with respect to the development of the interest rates, but we know cash impact. Finally, there is an associate that is not part of the portfolio yet, but was supposed to be part of by the end of September. That is the so-called corridor. That means the combination of the stakes of TTPC and TMPC that we agreed to buy from Eni. The process of getting all the full clearance is taking a bit longer. So we agreed with Eni to postpone to Q4 2022 the deadline to finalize the different steps of the final steps of the authorization and the closing of the deal. Last, the cash flow statement and balancing. Cash flow from operation for the period amounted to 2.5 billion euros, including 1.1 of cash generation from changing working capital. The main dynamics behind this are the same explained in the previous quarter, deriving basically from balancing and settlement activities, which should be reversed in the next quarters, even if subject to gas market volatility that, of course, will influence the total value of these items. These come from an increase of cash deposits also as well and other items, partly offset by an increase in receivables related to the default service we are running for several companies. In addition, we experienced some cash absorption from energy efficiency due to the growth of sale in deep renovation line of business. Net investment for the period are mainly related to CapEx and CapEx payables, cash out for acquisition of Golar Tundra that happened beginning June 2022 by 329 million, and the cash out for the acquisition of 3 different plants from Asia, being part of a deal agreed last December 2021. We also had a cash in from the partial reimbursement of the OLT shareholders loan and the cash in from the De Nora IPO by 153 million. Other outflow of the period was payment for dividend equal to 845 million, while the non-cash item mainly refers to the convertible bond. As for the full year, we expect net debt in the range of 14.5-15 billion, depending on the timing of the cash-in of the default receivables and the evolution of working capital related to the balancing activity, which is subject to market volatility, as I mentioned before. The fast and hardly predictable interest rates and credit spread spike has been managed via, first, the front loading of our funding actions in the first part of 2022. Second, a larger recourse to committed credit facilities versus debt capital market, leveraging on our strongly rooted relationship with our core banks. And the shift to bank facility is providing us with a tenure that is more consistent with our tariff framework and the market consensus expectation of rate high. Cycle slow down in the second part of 2023, and second, flexibility in terms of early repayment and management of that capital market window opportunity. In this regard, in 2022 to date, we have raised about 5 billion of funding out of which 1.5 via DCM at 1% yield for 10 years tenure, and the balance by a credit facility with a tenure of from 2 to 5 years at favorable conditions. Let me make some very few closing remarks. I think that 9 months results confirm the resilience of the group against the backdrop of an uncertain scenario, changing gas flows, volatile gas prices, and the impact of the revision of the weighted average cost of capital on our infrastructure business that weighted for 95 million euros in the first 9 months. We are very satisfied with the authorization on the 2 storage and regas units, 2 projects that, along with the complete fulfilling of the storage facility, corroborate our commitment to support the country's energy security and is providing definitely a support on the development of the company in the upcoming years. So then, thank you for the attention, and I will be pleased to answer your question. And I turn the floor to you. Thank you.
Excuse me, this is the Chorus Call conference operator. We will now begin the question and answer session. Anyone who wishes to ask a question may press star and 1 on the touch-tone telephone. To remove your question, please press star and 2. Please pick up the receiver when asking questions. The first question comes from Javier Suarez of Mediobanca.
Hi, thank you for the presentation. 3 questions. The first one is on security of supply. Second one is the strategical positioning of the Italian network, and then on your managerial imprinting. So on the security of supply, the question is, in addition to the installation of the 2 new floating regasification units, what other measures Snam intends to undertake to better underpin the security of supply of the Italian gas system? So then the second question on the strategical position of the Italian network. So after the agreement between the French and the Spanish government that have decided to build a new direct offshore gas pipeline, which are the implications for the development, the future development and design of the Italian gas system? And the third question on your managerial imprinting. So there is a significant increase in rates, and the question would be, is this changing your view on how the company should look at capital allocation? Would you intend to accelerate, for example, on the asset rotation of plenty of your subsidiaries in a kind of back to basics strategy? Thank you.
Okay, then I'll start with the sequence. You posed the question. The first, how we intend to underpin the security of the country. Of course, as you mentioned, the floating vessels is the first step, but we are also working on, putting forward the project of the new backbone from south to north that is called the Adriatic Pipeline. The importance of this pipeline is not only with respect to the possible additional flows of gas that could come from the TAP development, but it's also important to guarantee flexibility on the network and put some additional capacity available for additional volumes that would come from Algeria, from Libya, and also from the new developments of gas fields outside of Sicily. It's something that is extremely important because I think that in the long run, the strategic security of supply can be achieved only if we are able to build and develop the infrastructure with certain redundancy that provides flexibility and also put us in a position to better manage the flows of gas toward the major consumption areas. Jointly, we are also working on expanding the gas storage capacity. We have a project that we submitted to the Ministry of Environment located in the northern part of Italy that could add more than 10% of the storage capacity to the country. And we have seen in this month how important can be the role that can play some additional capacity for the security of the country. We presently have, as I mentioned, a total capacity of 12 BCM. Those 12 BCM secure in between 25 to 30% of the demand during winter. But of course, the more we have in terms of capacity, the higher is the flexibility for the system we can put, and we also have the opportunity to further optimize the cost of gas, because if you have more space in the storage, you can also play more, let's say, wisely with respect to the gas prices. These are the three main pillars as far as security of supply is concerned. These are very committing also going forward, and will be also the three pillar of the development of the new business plan. The second question was about the role of the Italian network, if I understood correctly, with respect to the European scenario and in the Mediterranean area, in relation to the announced project of the so-called BARMAR, Barcelona and Marsiglia connection. Let me say first that it's not clear to me entirely if this pipeline will be purely dedicated to hydrogen or will be used partly also for gas. And here there is a slight mismatch in the communication between the French government and the Spanish government. I think that, however, even if this infrastructure will be used for some years to ship some gas, this will not influence the competitiveness and the role of the Italian infrastructure, also in the perspective of supporting some of the Central European demand, for a simple reason. Because I think through the floating vessel, we can, let's say, offer to the market almost 30 BCM of LNG capacity. That, of course, is a sizable capacity that will be definitely more competitive than having LNG delivered to Spain and then shipped through a pipeline into France and Central Europe. And that makes a clear, let's say, competitive advantage. The second, I think, relates to the possible perspective toward the new opportunities and new developments in the Eastern Med, means outside Israel and South Cyprus, where new capacity and new giant fields has been discovered and will be developed in the upcoming years. And the LNG facilities we have on the Adriatic Sea and also in the Mediterranean Sea will be only 2-3 days journey from that field, making those assets the most, let's say, favorable approaching gate point for Central Europe, being also in the northern part of Italy. The third was about the capital allocation. As I told you in the last conference calls, we are working on the new business plan that we introduced to the market in next January, the 19th, if I do recall correctly. And we are still making some work to understand how we can optimize the funding of this new wave of investments, and also if any, let's say, asset rotation will be, let's say, in the interest also of the Snam shareholders, because we don't have to forget that, of course, this asset rotation can provide cash-ins, proceeds to fund new investment, but also all these assets, even the performance I showed to you, provides a very attractive return in terms of earning per share. So we have also to balance in the perspective of managing the asset portfolio the impact that possible disposals can have on EPS of the company going forward.
Interesting. Thank you.
The next question is from Excuse me, sir. The next question is from Jose Ruiz of Barclays.
Yeah, good afternoon, and thanks for taking my questions. I have only two. The first one is, if you see any possibility of improvements in terms of output-based incentives for 2023. I mean, given that the generosity regarding Terna, and considering the importance of Snam in terms of managing the gas system, if there would be a little bit of a balance there. And secondly, related to the previous question from Javier, if you can share with us how much investment is this Adriatic pipeline project connecting the north with the south and the expansion of gas storage. Thank you very much.
With respect to the first, yes, in 2023 we expect let's say an enlargement in the kind of output-based we can get, and the first and most important will be the one related to the asset health. Let me give you an update on this process. We have been asked by the authority to prepare a methodology to, let's say, support and define the mechanism and the advantages for the final customers and the system in, let's say, optimizing the substitution of part of the network that expired its technical life. We have done the job we have been asked for. We submitted the methodology that has been published at the end of October, if I do recall correctly, was the 31st, and is now under the consulting phase. According to the time plan set by the authority, we should have the final decision by year-end, beginning next year, to see the methodology and the approach applied from January 1st, 2023. And this should provide a sizable contribution. I can't say that this contribution will be in line with the astonishing numbers that Terna made on output-based, but will be definitely a sizable contribution with respect to the numbers we have achieved so far. The second is about the Adriatic pipeline. Of course, this infrastructure is going to take roughly 5 years to be built. The total cost is 2.7 billion. The part that will fall into the next business plan ending at 2023 is about 1 billion. The new pipeline is planned to be on stream at the end of 2027.
Thank you very much.
The next question is from Stefano Gamberini of Equita.
Good afternoon, everybody. A few questions also from my side. The first regarding the asset rotation. Among the other assets, there is also the NOA. Could we expect we can say a reduction of the stake at the end of the lockup that, if I'm not wrong, expires at the end of the year? And what could be a level of stake that you consider core in this company? The second, regarding the investment in biomethane. You underlined that 59 million euro have been invested in the first 9 months in energy transition. What is the target for year-end, including also the acquisitions? And which kind of acceleration could we expect next year? In particular, I am also interested to understand what is the return that you expect for the investment in biomethane plants, considering that the decree has been disclosed. Finally, I have a question regarding the current scenario of rising interest rates. In the last 6 months, the interest rates increased by around 300 bips, and considering what could be a likely allowed WACC in 2024 or 25, we will see, but more or less this should be improved by just 100 basis points. So, do you consider to invest in this scenario the returns could be higher than your cost of capital? And the very final question, if you can repeat how you can finance or what are the measures that you put in place during this month in order to reduce your cost of debt in 2023. Many thanks. Hello.
Okay. Let's start with the asset rotation. I mean, you make reference to the De Nora. Yes, we have the lock-up period ending after 6 months, as usually, but that doesn't mean that we are eager to sell part of the stake, at least during this period. I think that in spite of the fact that the share price bounced back today by more than 4%, thanks to the very good results they released, we think that the real value of the company is much higher. So for the time being, unless the price goes up rapidly, we don't see, the opportunity to sell at these current prices that stake. That is one point. The second point, of course, refers to the funding needs. Presently, we don't have funding needs, so why should we sell part of the stake right now? Can be this part of the thoughts we are doing with respect to the in-car business plan, okay? But not in the, let's say, very next future. And that works, as I said, also for the other associates, because the performance that we have posted in 2022 and the looking we have for 2023 makes those associates extremely, extremely rewarding in terms of return. Of course, the ramp up in investments that will happen in 2023, 2024, and 2025 will drive some thoughts about how to optimize the portfolio, considering that, as I said last time, there are strategic stakes we want to retain entirely, and can be some stakes that might be less strategic. The second, the question was on biomethane and the projection of capex year-end, including the M&A. I have the total number is going to be for 12 months, 300 million. And that is the total capex we are planning in the energy transition. And the question about the internal rate of return of biomethane investments on the basis of the new decree, we value it in between 8 to 10%. The IRR we have posted so far in the acquisitions is going to be in between 7 to 8%. No, yes, 7 to 8%. About the third question, that how we are tackling with the rising interest rates. As I mentioned, we have done for 2022 a sizable pre-funding for 5 billion in total. And then we also secured through the bond we did in the beginning of the year, and the credit lines we arranged in the following months. We covered entirely the need for 2022, and we also have prepared and made some pre-funding for 2023 for a total number of 2 billion euros. Going forward, of course, mainly will depend on the interest rate course. What we do expect is a softening in the midterm, means 2-3 years' time. So we will go for optimizing in between debt capital markets and, let's say, credit market to try to optimize the cost.
Okay, just a quick follow-up, if I may. Regarding 2022, so you have more or less an idea what could be the cost of debt next year, and or we can say a magnitude of the increase that you expect versus 2022.
I think we are still finalizing because, of course, the cost relates to the additional funding we need to cover for 2023, and this will depend on some decisions we have still to take and will be, let's say, finalized for the industrial plan we will present to you in January. So that will make a change because, of course, this will be funded with additional new lines or sources, and therefore that will change the total cost, the average cost of that for 2023. Just be patient a few weeks.
Okay. Many thanks, Steve. Many thanks.
The next question is from Emanuele Oggioni of Kepler Cheuvreux.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the presentation. I have two questions left. The first one is on associates. When we assume a stable contribution in Q4, stable, I mean year-on-year, Snam could record roughly 330, at least 330 million euros from associates, compared with roughly 300 in 2021, which was already marked an history record for the group. So my question is if you agree with my forecast for the full year. And the second question is on the deflator. What are your expectations for the deflator on 2023 after you mentioned in the slide 3.9% recorded in H1? Thank you.
Okay. As far as the associates is concerned, don't forget that, as I stressed, the two largest contributors to the growth of performance with respect to last year has reached the cap. In fact, if you look at the first half result, the overperformance was exactly in line with the overperformance we are posting in the first 9 months. Okay, and that is something that cannot additionally contribute to the projection of the year. The second, I made a note in my speech that refers to the ADNOC. ADNOC is a sort of industrial/financial asset, and for the way we have to account it, we have to, let's say, reassess the fair value of the forthcoming cash flows and dividends for years going forward, and given the increased interest rates, at the end of the year we will have to reassess, okay, the fair value of the stake, and we do expect, given the higher interest rates, that will require a reduction in the value of the fair value of that stake that will bring the total net total contribution of the associates more in line with the number we had last year. The second one is the deflator, okay? The question is...
your expectation for 2023? For the deflator of 2022, which will be applied to next year up.
It's not a number that has been published by the authority. What we do expect is something above 3%.
Okay, thank you. Very clear.
The next question is from James Brand of Deutsche Bank.
Hi, thanks for the presentation. I was hoping you could help us understand a bit better some elements around the overall gas outlook for Italy, given how plugged in you are. So I had kind of 2 or 3 elements of the question. The first is, it looks like there isn't any more Russian gas flowing to Italy, but I haven't actually seen a confirmation of that anywhere. So I was wondering whether you could confirm that there isn't any more Russian gas flowing to Italy. And then, if that continues to be the case, I think everyone expects that this winter looks fine, but maybe the winter after looks a bit tighter. So I was wondering whether you can maybe share your thoughts on whether that's the case, and if that is the case, whether there's anything extra you can do to try and improve the situation. For instance, maybe trying to bring forward your second floating LNG terminal that's coming online. Thank you very much.
Okay. About the Russian gas, one thing is the physical volumes that are entering into the country. Another thing is the volumes that could be available. In October, I'm talking about the most recent numbers, of course. In October, due to the mild weather, and the strong flows from south, the Italian market was longer. And therefore, as I mentioned, we operated or we swapped the flows from Russia, toward the Central European market. We also had some days with a physical reverse flow from Italy to Austria, and the largest majority of the 2.9 billion cubic meter of gas that was exported toward Austria. So the Russian flows are still coming in a region of 20-25 million cubic meters per day. That is about 10% of the normalized demand in this period. And but physically they are not delivered in these weeks to Italy because of let's say the exceeding offer of gas. So we still have the contribution from Russia. Second question is about the outlook for the winter. Let me refer for a while to the role of the storages can play. Of course, let me start first considering, let's say, a normal winter, when we have a peak in demand in January that is in between 340, 350 million cubic meters per day. With this kind of shape, the total gas we have stored will be fairly sufficient to guarantee the coverage of the demand. In case there is a more freezing winter, mainly will depend if it's going to happen in January or February, and the reason why depends on the reason why there is a difference is simply because the pressure and the total amount of gas in the storage is higher in January than in February, and how long this freezing period stays in the country. Because if it is for a few days, for a week, we can, given the very strong, very full storage of the storages, we can guarantee an overperformance in the, let's say, supply of gas, by 10, 20%, even 30% for a few days. And to further guarantee this overperformance, we introduced for the first time this reverse flow for November and December, when we will reinject some gas to let's say, preserve the total amount stored and therefore the pressure in the storage for January. These are, let's say, the things we are technically doing. Then on top of that, we also requested the authorization to expand the capacity of the OLT terminal from 3.7 BCM to 5 BCM. This request has already obtained the local authorization and now is in process for getting the national authorization that we expect to be obtained by year end, therefore leaving for 2023 since January, let's say, additional volumes. Plus, we are also operating to optimize the capacity through the southern corridor. As far as Algeria is concerned, of course, that takes the majority of the share, the lion's share of the contribution. But we are also testing in these days an add up in the flows of TAP that used to be to run at 28 to 29 million cubic meters per day, and now is hovering around 30 million, and we are expecting to test 32 million per day. That on, let's say, yearly basis, it's equivalent to 1 BCM more. So, of course, I'm playing with small numbers, but the tight balancing between supply and demand relates exactly to this kind of numbers. So that is, in general, the levers we are playing with. Of course, on the government side, there is also has been set a procedure, or is to be finalized, a procedure to, let's say, have a possible reduction in industrial demand in case of very strong shortage in the supply due to very freezing and prolonged period during winter, or sizable shortfall in electricity production.
That's really, really helpful. Can I just confirm on your first answer about the flows from Russia? So your position is that you could get the gas if you wanted. It's just not kind of needed at the moment, or it's needed more elsewhere in kind of Eastern Europe, because there was the whole, quite public press reports around Russia halting flows to Austria, and then there seemed to be a report that they were resuming, and then when you actually look at the data, it seems like they didn't resume, or at least not on the net basis. But you're saying that you could, if you wanted to get that gas, in December or January, then you could get it.
I'm just trying to answer your question with the information I do have, because I do not manage the portfolio and the contracts of Russian gas that the different shippers have. What I can tell you is the fact that if I look the so-called nominations in days in where there was the need for, let's say, internal demand, we had supply. And don't forget that the total supply of Russian gas that is delivered in Baumgarten comes through Ukraine, and that is the sole pipeline that hasn't been never, let's say, affected by sizable reduction in flows. Of course, if we compare it to the first half of the year, there has been a remarkable reduction in the flows by, let's say, 60%, but from, let's say, June, July forward, we have seen a stable flow in between 20 to 25 million cubic meters per day. That is the rate of flows we see still coming. My comment was with respect to the physical flows that are delivered to Italy, and in these weeks we haven't. If you go on our website and you see in real time the flows transiting toward Austria, you will see zero, because simply there is an oversupply in the country, and those flows are routed to the other subsidiary GCA toward Central Europe.
Okay, very interesting. Thank you very much.
The next question is from Bartek Kubicki of SocGen.
Good afternoon. Thank you for taking my questions. Just three quick things to discuss, please. Firstly, on the regulation and the allowed WACC, and most specifically the allowed cost of debt, and the formula which is in place, which will be sort of lagging the increase in the actual cost of debt. I wonder if you see a necessity to renegotiate with the regulator the framework for calculating the allowed cost of debt. because it will definitely not increase over the next couple of years, given how the formula is established. So that's the first thing. Secondly, I wonder if you see any change in the payments behavior from gas distribution companies, because they have been simply hit quite hard lately with lower allowed OPEX, lower allowed WACC, with rising cost of financing. Maybe they have issues from supply companies. So I wonder if you see any tension in the payment system from especially the smaller gas distribution companies right now. And thirdly, just curiosity, given the fact that gas flows or the flows directions have changed in Italy, do you see also any change in cash flows related to tariffs collection? Because obviously, I guess you are collecting entry and exit fees, and obviously exit and entries are a bit different right now than they were a year ago. Thank you very much.
Okay. With respect to the regulation and the tariff scheme, I think we have the mechanism with the triggers that allows to recognize both the adjustment for the inflation, or the so-called deflator, that, by the way, checking backward, that tends to be largely consistent. And also with respect to the interest rates. I mean, we expect if interest rates will remain at the current levels, we will trigger in 2024. And so we have this kind of, let's say, hedging. The sole issue is that this hedging operates with a mismatch in timing. And a mismatch in timing. So we will recover, okay, 2 years later, the effects we see today. So that is basically how the mechanism works. And this is organized on the basis of the looking forward with the yearly trigger mechanism. That I think is significantly protecting, I mean, the kind of business we have. The second is about possible, if I understood correctly, possible, let's say, sort of credit crunch or impacts on the activities we have with respect to distributors. I have to say, with respect to the companies that manage the distribution activities and then the supply to final customer, we haven't seen any, let's say, impact, having in mind that we are fully guaranteed on the revenues recognized by the regulation. The second aspect refers to the default service we manage. That is the last instance service we provide to those final clients that lose the gas supply. Again, since we provide this service on behalf of the national system, we are fully protected on credit risk. So if we don't cash in, we will reimburse entirely within roughly 12 months. And where do we stand? Nowadays, we have a credit outstanding of 0.5 billion euros that refers to the first 9 months of the year for this kind of service. As I said, that figure will be, let's say, notified to the national system operator by year-end, and then we will reimburse for the part we have not cashed in. So, of course, this kind of service and activity that, by the way, provides some output revenues, additional output revenues, being a service that goes on top of our, let's say, regulated activities, might have an impact on working capital, but this impact is limited in time. I can also tell you that we are in discussion with the national authority and the government to guarantee eventually resources or an anticipation on the reimbursement in case the total amount of outstanding credits overcome a physiological level. I think I've answered both the second and the third, if I understood correctly.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Sir, at this time there are no questions registered. Would you like to make some closing remarks?
So then, gentlemen, thank you so much for the time you devoted to the 9 months results of the company. And I'm pleased to, let's say, talk to you again in January when we will introduce the new business plan of the company. Thank you so much.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining. The conference is now over and you may disconnect your telephones.